This isn't just a story. You control the ending. Vote now. Some people ruined their lives and never fully grasp how or why they did it. My wife Rebecca is one of those people. Hi everyone, welcome back, thanks for joining us today. We have got a brand new story to share with you, so let us begin. My name is Daniel, and if you have ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, this story might just hit home. I thought Rebecca, my wife, was my biggest supporter. I was wrong. This is the story of how I caught my wife cheating on me with my boss and the moment I saw it for myself. I knew nothing would ever be the same again. You know, I have always believed that hard work pays off, that if you put in the time, the effort, the sacrifice, eventually you will see the rewards. I worked at Horizon Dynamics, one of the most prestigious firms in the industry. While some of my colleagues left the office at 5 p.m. sharp, I stayed behind, making sure every report was flawless and every strategy airtight. I was not just doing the bare minimum. I was investing in my future, and now it was finally about to pay off because the company would be holding the annual Horizon Dynamics dinner. It was formal, exclusive, and high stakes. Promotions were not just sent out in emails. They were announced in front of hundreds of executives, clients, and employees. If you got called up that night, it meant your work was recognized, that you were on your way to something bigger. And I was one of the top contenders. I knew my name was in the discussion for a major promotion. This was not just about getting a new title. It meant higher pay, more opportunities, and real power in the company. That night was supposed to be a celebration, not just for me but for us. If there was one thing I was sure of, it was Rebecca, my wife, my biggest supporter, my partner. We had been together for years and through everything. She was not just my wife. She was the person who made me believe in myself even when I doubted. I never once questioned her loyalty. I never had a reason to. At least, that is what I thought. The night of the company's annual dinner had finally arrived. The venue was exactly what you would expect from a firm like Horizon Dynamics. I felt proud, not just because of my career but because of who was standing beside me, Rebecca. Rebecca looked incredible. She had always been effortlessly beautiful, but tonight she carried herself with an elegance that turned heads the moment we walked in. I introduced her to my colleagues, and as always, she knew exactly what to say, exactly how to hold a conversation. And people loved her for it. She smiled, laughed, and made small talk, completely at ease in a room full of high-powered executives. Even some of the senior partners, the ones who barely acknowledged most employees, were drawn to her. I stood beside her, watching, basking in the admiration she received. This was my wife, my partner, the woman I had built my life with. And in that moment, I felt proud to have her by my side. But as the night went on, I started noticing things. Rebecca, my wife, seemed to be gravitating toward Victor, my boss, a man with power, influence, and connections. He was not just respected in the company. He controlled opportunities. He decided who moved up and who stayed stagnant. At first, it seemed harmless. She was just being friendly, right? I told myself she was just being polite, just making conversation. But my gut was telling me otherwise. At one point, Victor leaned in, saying something I could not hear, and Rebecca smiled. I felt like an outsider, like I was watching something unfold that I did not understand. And for the first time that night, I felt uneasy. Hours later, Rebecca leaned in close, placing her hand lightly on my arm. I need to take this, she said, lifting her phone slightly. I glanced at the screen. No name, just a number. So I just nodded. Yes, sure, I will be here. She smiled, squeezed my arm, and walked off, disappearing into the sea of well-dressed executives and servers carrying trays of champagne. At first, I did not think anything of it. I kept my focus on the conversations around me, nodding along as my colleagues discussed market trends and upcoming projects. But then 20 minutes passed. Rebecca was still gone. I casually glanced around the room, expecting to see her somewhere, maybe near the bar or chatting with another guest. Nothing. Another 5 minutes. I checked my phone. No messages from her. Maybe she stepped outside where it was quieter. Maybe the call was just taking longer than expected. I turned back to my conversation, trying to push away the slight unease creeping up my spine. But then another 5 minutes. Now it had been 30 minutes since she left, and suddenly I was not so sure anymore. I felt someone nudge my arm, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Mark, one of my colleagues. We were not exactly close, but we had worked together enough times to have a decent rapport. He leaned in slightly, swirling the whiskey in his glass, and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "You are a patient man, bro." If my wife was that close to my boss, I would have questions. I let out a laugh. What are you talking about? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Mark took a slow sip of his drink and shrugged. Come on, man, we all see it. She has been cozying up to Victor all night, laughing, touching his arm, giving him those looks. I did not respond. I could not. I just smiled and told him my wife was being friendly. By now, the unease sitting in my stomach had turned into full-blown suspicion. I checked my watch. 35 minutes had passed since Rebecca had excused herself to take a call. I started scanning the room, looking for her familiar figure in the crowd of executives, servers, and colleagues. But no matter where I looked, she was not there. I checked near the bar, thinking maybe she had run into an old friend. Nothing. I glanced toward the balcony, a place where guests often stepped out for air. Empty. That is when it hit me. I had not seen Victor in a while either. A cold realization crept up my spine as my mind started connecting the dots. My heartbeat picked up as I moved through the venue, my pace quickened with each step. The conversations around me faded into background noise. I was not even sure where I was headed. My feet just moved, driven by an instinct I desperately wanted to be wrong about. As I turned into one of the quieter hallways, I passed the restrooms, and that is when I heard a low murmur, voices barely audible through the thick doors. I slowed my steps, straining to hear, my mind already racing. Then I heard something else, a muffled moan. I took a step forward, then another, stopping just inches from the restroom door. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but I forced myself to call out, "Rebecca?" Silence. I swallowed hard, my voice firmer now. "Rebecca, are you there?" Still nothing. A rustling sound followed, the kind of noise people make when they have been caught doing something they should not be doing. That silence, that hesitation, it told me everything. My patience snapped. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, ready to call security if I had to. But before I could press the button, the door creaked open. Rebecca stepped out first. Her hair was slightly messy, strands falling loose over her flushed face. The dress she had worn so perfectly earlier was now wrinkled slightly askew, like someone had been pulling at it. Then, stepping out right behind her, was Victor. His tie was loosened, the top button of his shirt was undone. His face was not as panicked as Rebecca's. It was tight, unreadable, like he was trying to assess how bad the damage was. For a moment, the three of us stood there, frozen. None of us spoke, but we did not need to. The truth was right there, staring me in the face. I felt nothing, no rage, no immediate outburst. I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and hit record. Today is the annual Horizon Dynamics dinner. This is my wife, Rebecca, and my boss, Victor. I just caught them making out in a restroom together. Victor stiffened. Rebecca gasped, stepping toward me, her voice breaking. "Daniel, please." I lifted a hand, cutting her off. I was not interested in excuses. I was not interested in explanations. I kept the camera on them for a few seconds longer, watching as their perfect little lie crumbled under the weight of the truth. Then, without another word, I stopped the recording and walked away. Your move. What should Daniel do? Like, leak the video online and destroy their reputations. Dislike, use the recording for a quiet divorce and get Victor fired. Comment power, blackmail Victor for a promotion. See what happened next in the next video.